All right, now some football coverage. It was our lead story in 7 in 7. The NCAA handing out a discipline, a 4-year show cause order to Jim Harbaugh for unethical conduct based on multiple recruiting violations during a COVID dead period and not cooperating with investigators in misleading the investigation for the NCAA. You might be thinking to yourself, wait, Jim Harbaugh doesn't coach at Michigan anymore. What does it matter if the governing body of collegiate athletics disciplines him? And you would be correct. A 4-year show cause for Jim Harbaugh doesn't really matter for the guy making $16 million per year as the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers in the National Football League.
I'll tell you one thing, though. Like, the NCAA really hasn't, meshed well over the past 20 years with some of the outcomes that they come up with. Because you take a look at, Reggie Bush, who was obviously cheating, but they take away his Heisman after he left and then take away the wins and say, technically, you don't win any national championships. But he was a singular player on that team. If your coach is doing damage, why is he the only one getting the penalty? Like, I could see with USC, they go, hey, Reggie, you know what? We're going to take away just your individual accolades and the Heisman, but we're going to leave all the wins on the field for USC and also the national championships. Why is that not done here? Same thing when you take a look at Louisville. Like, they won a national championship under Pitino. Pitino did wrong, recruiting violations. They stripped that team of wins and also the national championship. So theoretically, why is Michigan not being stripped of a national championship and wins then? Am I missing something here?
I don't know. We don't know what the notice of allegation is going to be for the sign-stealing operation. Oftentimes, recruiting violations, even with the unethical conduct that Jim Harbaugh has presented to the NCAA as a governing body, do not result in the vacation of wins in a national title, but I'm not entirely sure. Again, this is not related in essence to the sign-stealing operation and the potential notice of allegation that we expect to come down in the next few days to the Michigan football program. But it is clear the NCAA looks at Michigan as a bad actor in terms of how they deal with NCAA violations and regulations as a football program. If Jim Harbaugh were to return to college football by 2028, we would be shocked. But if he does, he would be suspended for a full season for whatever program hires him. Again, he signed a 5-year, $16 million per year average deal with the Chargers to become the head coach in Los Angeles. This is outside of the sign-stealing operation. Elsewhere, DRS at Seattle Seahawks practice yesterday. An ugly scene, multiple fights breaking out, including DK Metcalf, star wide receiver for the Hawks, taking off his helmet and swinging it at his teammate, cornerback Trey Brown. We've seen joint practice fights throughout this week. You don't really want it to be that visceral and that internal in your own organization.
Yeah, take care of yourselves out there. That's the name of this. Look, you're going to come to fights and have blows, but you don't want to take that. First of all, what are you taking the helmet off for? Keep the helmet off. That's your best protection. And he's a giant wide receiver. I'm sure he can swing around a couple DBs at a chance. But also, we are talking about these fights. Love to see the Malik Neighbors one, like, ha, I'm going to hit you in the head, and then get the brakes beat off you 3 seconds later. That's a tough look for us wide receivers, man. Can't be doing that. Stop.
Hour 2 next. Welcome to I'm just kidding. It's the final segment of our opening hour live right here on the early line. I was a little bit too hasty to say it was hour 2. We still have 5 more minutes of our opening hour. Anything you would like to add, Donnie Rightside?
Sometimes, though, like the show has been flowing really well, and sometimes you don't like to look at the clock. Well. You just let the topics flow. I feel now that you felt like it was hour number 2 already, that we might have the longest next 2 hours that we've ever had on this channel here. So I think you might have hit the Kai box, because everybody's been out there, right? You're at work, you're in the cubicle, you're out on the street, like, hey, I wonder what time it is, or maybe you're like, being a construction worker and just fall asleep there. You're waiting to eat your sandwiches by noon. It turns out it's only 10 a.m. I mean, it happens all the time out there in the streets. Don't watch the clock. Have some fun. Let's get after it.
Yeah, tough stuff for us. But I think with the football conversation we are set to have here, at least to end out the opening hour and extend it into the start of hour 2, it should fly by, because football is fun and time flies when you are having exactly that. Quote. 2 games tonight. That was good, huh? 2 games tonight. to officially kick off week number 1 in full of the National Football League preseason. The Giants and the Lions, we'll talk about that to start hour number 2. The Patriots and the Panthers tonight at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough. Both games scheduled to kick at around 7 p.m. Eastern time, so it's not like one is the nightcap and one starts earlier, pretty much kicking off simultaneously. But it begins new eras for both franchises. Gerard Mayo takes the reins in Foxborough. Dave Canales, the new head man in Charlotte for the Carolina Panthers. Of course, we learned earlier this week that Bryce Young would not play in this preseason opener for Carolina against New England. It moved the line drastically. It was a 4.5-point spread in favor of the Pats then. It's now up to nearly a touchdown in favor of the Patriots, a 6.5-point number in favor of New England. The over-under stands at 33.5. Don't believe we'll see the veteran Jacoby Brissett tonight for New England, but maybe we will. I would expect to see a lot of rookie quarterback focus on Drake May and the guy they took on day 3 out of Tennessee with a rocket arm, Joe Milton, as well.
Yeah, it should be fun to watch it play out. And also, sometimes when you have new regimes, which technically you have back-to-back new regimes here in this game, you want to put that footing out there by getting wins. And now, granted, it still is a preseason game, but it does matter in sort of like building that confidence inside your room. Because if you go in and say, oh, this game doesn't matter, you get beat 26-7, it's not a great start. Even though, again, I preface this by it's preseason. You still want to get off on that right foot and look like you are running a competent franchise your first time around. We'll see if that happens. But I don't know, 6.5, like, what's the reason for that going up? Because Young is not going to play. I mean, you're basically the battle of the backups here in a game that's probably going to get around 30 points total. I probably just lean on taking the points. Is that a betting option or is that a handicap? No, not necessarily, but I don't know why that line would have jumped up so big as if it's like, hey, by the way, Tom Brady was going to play a half and now he's not in New England. Come on now. Who are they actually playing at this point?
Yeah, it's a good point, I would say, DRS, in terms of the overall roster competition. Also, the backup in Carolina, I believe at last check, is Andy Dalton, who's got some experience there at the quarterback spot. We expect to see some of the starters for New England on the defensive side of the football, where they have invested in terms of deals and contract extensions this offseason. Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers, under Gerard Mayo, who, of course, was a player under Bill Belichick in New England, was a defensive assistant the past few years for the Patriots under Belichick as well. Carolina last year, 17 games, all 17 as an underdog, 4-11-2 against the spread, just 2-15 straight up. The Pats only booked as a favorite 5 times last year in regular season action, 1-4 against the spread. The Panthers, by the way, with Bryce Young as a rookie, winless last year in the preseason, 0-3. Here is the outlook for two teams we expect to be near the bottom of the barrel this year in the National Football League. The Panthers, a higher win total, 5.5, and the over has the juice. The Pats, the lowest win total in all the National Football League, 4.5 is the number. Just 4 wins for New England last year in year number 24, the 24th and final under Bill Belichick. The last time prior to 2023 DRS with 4 wins or less. A 2-win football team way back in 1992.
Yeah, it's pretty wild when you take a look at Bill Belichick. Like, if you're going to take over for a legend, chances are he probably leaves you with a pretty good deck here to sort of get after it. You take a look at Pittsburgh when Mike Tomlin took over for Bill Cowher. That was a really good franchise and a really good football team, sort of handing off that baton. But now you're taking a look at Gerard Mayo. Like, honestly, unless he's going to be around for 4 to 5 years to see it through the rebuild, when you know you get fired quickly if that team doesn't respond, he's in such a tough spot up there in New England.
Now it's hour number 2. Up next on the Early Line. Welcome to hour number 2, live right here on this Thursday on the Early Line on Sports Grid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. It is a Thursday that features not 1, but 2 NFL preseason games to fully kick off week number 1 of the National Football League postseason. A doubleheader on a Thursday. It feels like football in New England. It's the Patriots playing host to the Panthers. The Pats, a 6.5-point favorite with a total of 33 and a hook. And it's been feisty at joint practices this week in New Jersey between the New York Giants and the Detroit Lions. The G-Men, a 3.5-point favorite tonight in MetLife with a total of 34.5 against the Detroit Lions. Plenty to get to here in hour number 2. We'll go all around the National Football League with many NFL conversations and some more Olympic coverage in this second hour as well.
Yeah, and what is nice, too, you take a look at tonight, you got a doubleheader in the NFL for the preseason, and you got a 3-pack there on a Friday night, a full slate there on a Saturday, even some games on a Sunday. So you do have an action-packed weekend where it's not all just condensed into one night here. So you like to sort of play it out. And also, I'm still interested to see, we're going to get more and more looks at this new onside kick / kickoff rule that you're going to be putting in place. So I'm going to be watching tonight, tuned in here. Both games at 7 o'clock, might be dipping in, might be watching a little Major League Baseball. So good night set ahead for us tonight. No doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So a pretty good Thursday in MLB as a marquee matchup continues with Arizona and Philadelphia for a 4-game set extending through the weekend out in the desert. DRS, let's start with the one of 2 games that we have tonight on a Thursday in NFL preseason action. But these 2 teams, that being the Detroit Lions and the New York Giants, pretty familiar with one another. Multiple joint practices this week at Giants camp, but things have been anything but friendly. We have seen multiple joint practice fights between these 2 sides. You mentioned Malik Neighbors a couple of days ago, goes back and slaps somebody, and Kirby Joseph comes right up to his face and starts to get involved. Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes getting in the middle of a couple of these scuffles throughout this week of joint practices as well, which has led to a fighting fine on behalf of the National Football League. Both Detroit and New York, as organizations, fined $200,000 because of the joint practice fights, because the NFL sent out a memo earlier this month trying to make sure there would not be any practice fights and conduct unprofessional to the National Football League.
There are always going to be fights in these joint practices because why? You can get away with it. And you say, well, why does it happen now and not in the games? Because you try that in a game, you're not playing for 4 weeks. Imagine if the NFL had the same stringent requirements by going. Now, granted, sometimes when you're just practicing yourself, you're going to get fights there. You separate it, just teammates there. But let's just say the NFL had the same requirements for a joint scrimmage and goes, all right, we got the tapes out there. Oh, you threw 2 punches? Yeah, you're going to miss the first 2 games of the regular season. Nobody would fight at that point. But I also mind it. You just don't want to make a mockery of it, because you are going to have multiple times where offensive linemen in 90-degree temperatures going against defensive linemen, things get chippy. You know, you're not calling holding penalties. I'm trying to get to the quarterback. You're holding me. There's a late hit or 2 on this side. Things are always going to happen. But what the NFL doesn't want is the mockery of it all. Like, football is not ingrained. Like, hey, hockey, they're going to fight. Well, that's ingrained in the sport here. It's not ingrained in football. And I'm sure the NFL does get a little bit embarrassed when it comes out. Us, the fans, we love to watch it on a day-to-day basis. Like, hey, look at this. 2 teams getting chippy. Let's see what actually happens here. But the NFL doesn't want that. But again, they're not going to come into the practice and say 2-game suspension during the regular season. They just dole out the fines with the NFL teams play, and they move on. And you always hear it on a day-to-day basis. The coaches aren't saying, let's get out here and start some scrums. Like, look, treat the other guy with respect here. If it gets chippy, you always want your teammates back. They understand that. We just don't want to have guys taking off their helmets and swinging on people with them.
Yeah, absolutely so, right? You can get intense. You can have that passion. It's the first time in a joint practice that you see somebody else that is not on your team or in your locker room throughout the duration of training camp. We gave our thoughts on if joint practices are tiring, if joint practice fights are tired or if they're a little bit out of date at this moment. Both you and I, DRS, kind of believe that it's just part of what training camp is at these joint practices. And there is not the necessary consequence to it that you would have for smacking somebody in the face during an actual NFL regular season game, a 15-yard penalty and probably getting punched out of the game as well. So I would just say that when it comes to this, yes, there is the consequence of that penalty and the fine of financial value to your franchise, but nothing these owners cannot front. However, you can't see that hostility carry over tonight into the preseason, because then there are the yellow laundry that will be featured on the field. It's a 3.5-point number in favor of the New York Giants. 34.5 is the total. This within the last hour from Jordan Rannon, if that's how you pronounce his last name, Renan, whatever it is, the Giants ESPN NFL reporter, that many of the starters, Daniel Jones, even the rookie Malik Neighbors, not expected to play tonight. We know Jared Goff is not going to play tonight for Detroit, so a lot of backups in this game between the G-men and the Lions.
Yeah, I never really have true handicaps on these games. I understand that people just looking at the quarterback depth charts and who's supposed to play, probably the best way to figure it out. But it's just hard. Like, again, 33 and a half, 34 and a half totals, 3.5. You basically, for me, hey, Donnie, who you going to take? I don't know who's playing. Just give me the points at this point. So that's the way I would lean towards it. I am interested just to see some of these guys on the field, but more particular, as I said, how it plays out there
Right.
with the special teams. But outside of that, week number 1 in the preseason, fun just to watch your team out there, even though nobody is there. Week number 2, maybe get a little bit of a sneak peek, but just dating back 15, 20 years in the NFL, you'd really take the time here. Even we're talking about like fantasy drafts, like, hey, let me get a look at this one guy's going to get probably 25 to 30 carries in the preseason. That's no longer the case. It's just a crapshoot. You're reading beat writers' reports on a day-to-day practice basis as opposed to looking at games anymore at this point because you don't really get out. And also, from a coach's perspective, Ben, they tell you right to your face, we get way more out of these joint scrimmages than we ever get for the preseason games themselves.
And it's part of one of the reasons the joint practices leading up to a preseason game have that intensity. It's the only time you see ones versus ones. We saw a lot of clips out of joint practice of Penei Sewell, the second highest paid O-lineman in the National Football League now, behind Tristan Wirfs and I think Christian Darrisaw, so maybe even the third highest paid guy, but got that extension early this offseason from Brad Holmes in the Motor City, manhandling Kayvon Thibodeau of the New York Giants, who talked about it afterwards saying, the only thing I'm scared of is those practice images of Penei Sewell absolutely dominating us, but we're probably not going to see Sewell or Thibodeau tonight in that matchup between the New York Giants and the Detroit Lions. So it's an opportunity for a coaching mentality. You know, Dan Campbell, regardless of who is out there, is going to bring that emotion and fire even to a preseason game. The Lions 2-1 last preseason, the Giants 1-2, but it's also a glimpse at these organizations as they get ready for a new year and the expectation that follows. The Lions win total 10.5, double-digit victories expected. The over has the juice. They are the favorites to win the NFC North for a second consecutive year. That would be more divisional titles in the past 2 years, 2 that the Lions had in the last 30, 0 around the National Football League.
Yeah, things are looking up in Detroit. It's a really good ball club here. They paid their guys, but the most important thing sometimes is not the actual players on the field. You kept, which I think is maybe the best individual offensive coordinator in the NFL on your sideline in Ben Johnson. That camaraderie is going to go a long way this season. We're expecting big things from the Lions, but having said that too, you're looking at the Lions where typically in the past, like, hey, I wonder if the Lions can do good. Here they come. Now the Lions are that team that nobody is going to be getting taken advantage of. Like, oh, I didn't think the Lions were going to be that good when we played them at this point. Bullseye on the Lions. We'll see how they handle it this season. But I'm still expecting big things. Everything is there in place for them to have another good season.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely so. A historic campaign in 2023, first divisional crown in 3 decades, first playoff win, an NFC championship game appearance in 32 years. The Giants, a different set of expectation, as Donnie and I discussed earlier this week. What exactly is the future of Daniel Jones in this organization? What exactly is the franchise's future with the head coach Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, despite winning a playoff game just 2 years ago? More around the NFL and training camp up next. Live right here on the early line on this Thursday, a Thursday that features a doubleheader of NFL preseason action. 2 games to fully kick off week number 1 of the preseason around the National Football League. And shout out to SportsGrid, always doing great work. You can look at a list that SportsGrid has. Go to SportsGrid on Twitter of the top 8 worst active NFL head coaches against the number in preseason games. Of course, varying levels of a sample size. But one of the guys featured tonight, Brian Daboll, who is 0-6 against the number in his 2 preseasons now as the head man of the New York Giants. Of course, the G-Men a 3.5-point favorite against the Detroit Lions tonight. So now let's take a look at the National Football League, DRS, beyond the preseason for the entirety of the regular season, in a trend that has been long-standing around the NFL for the better part of the last 2 decades. A team that finishes dead last in a division looking to win the division the year following. Here are the teams that finished in last in the AFC. Who will go worst to first. Now, all 4 teams in the AFC North finished with a winning record, so the Bengals, technically at 9-8, did finish in last, second best price to win the AFC North this year with the expectation of a fully healthy Joe Burrow. The Chargers in last year in the AFC West, the Titans finishing in the cellar of the AFC South, and the Patriots just 4-13, but still the longest price to win the AFC East this year. Out of that group, Donnie, I would think the Bengals get your eye, but who do you think has the best chance to go worst to first from last season to this year in 2024?
Out of those two, it's got to be the Bengals. And also, forget about you're talking about Joe Burrow. Let's just say if he's healthy, one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, that should help, obviously. But you are taking a look at regime changes on most of these franchises. The Bengals don't have a regime change. Yes, they lost their offensive coordinator, but still the head coach is there. The quarterback is there. The wide receivers technically are still there. But the Chargers, what did they do? New head coach. The Titans, what did they do? New head coach. Patriots, what did they do, Ben? New head coach as well. It takes some time. Typically, you don't hit the ground running. And even in a case with the Chargers, 5-12 last year, we've always said, like, boy, I wonder if they can just get a competent coach that when everything around them is swirling and going bad, he can calm the waters here and get them to win football games and get them to sustain late. You figure the Chargers have that, but they didn't keep the same football team. I wanted to see the Chargers come into the season with the exact carbon copy roster they had last year with just a competent coach like we know Harbaugh will be. So that makes it a little bit tougher. And also, yes, you're not just going, hey, let's win this division because finally Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid retired in the same season. You still have to go up against the Chiefs. That's going to be hard enough. Yeah. The Titans, a lot of question marks, like what they did in the offseason. Hopkins' injury, not going to help them, but you're banking on Will Levis and a brand new coach winning that division. That's going to be tough. The Patriots, we don't have to say anything more. The least talented franchise in the NFL by a wide margin. They're not winning anything in the East here. So if I'm looking at the Bengals' perspective, even though I'm not high on the Bengals of this list, by far it's the Bengals with the best chance to go from worst to first for me.
It is the simple answer. It is the easy answer. It is the correct answer based on trends. 19 of the last 21 NFL seasons, a team has finished worst in a division and makes their way all the way up to first. That's why we highlight these things here for you on this Thursday on the early line. For New England, a 24-1 price on the Patriots to win the AFC East division. It is the longest price of any team in any of the 8 divisions around the National Football League. I think Tennessee will be right around that 6-7 win margin in a compelling AFC South, which was the division a year ago. In fact, has been the division each of the past 2 years. The Jaguars from worst in 2021 to divisional champ in 2022. The Texans worst in 2022 to divisional title winner in 2023. The Chiefs have won the AFC West 8 consecutive years. The Bolts do have the second best price, but Kansas City, strongest number of any team to win any of the 8 divisions around the NFL at -230. Here's what I'll say about the Chargers. They're not going to finish in dead last in the AFC West this year, but they're not going to unseat the Chiefs atop the AFC West as of right now. It's the Bengals, not only because of the trend, but if Joe Burrow is healthy and he has played 16 of 17 games, 2 fully or almost fully healthy seasons for the Bengals in his 4-year NFL career. In those 2 seasons, he has played at least 16 games in the regular season for Cincy. They have won the division. They have played at least in the AFC title game. And, of course, in 2021, they made it all the way to Super Bowl 56. If Joe Burrow plays 15-plus games, my pick to win the division is the Bengals. Thus, it would make them my pick to be the team to go from worst to first within the AFC.
That offense could cook. It certainly can, but also still a lot of things we're still waiting on as we head. August the 8th, we're going to start, let's just say in roughly 1 month, a lot of things to decipher. Whether or not Joe Burrow truly is healthy and when he gets that game contact, we'll find out because even he's saying, look, that's a tough offseason where I can't really throw the football all that much. Now, we're not making any excuses for Burrow. If he's healthy game number 1, we expect big things right out of the gate. But also, where does Jamar Chase factor into all of this? Is he going to even practice throughout the entirety of this offseason, which is a amazing, again, that's still to this point. But it is simple to say, hey, look, the Bengals as a franchise never got – no, we saw them in the Super Bowl just a few short years ago out there in Los Angeles. The pedigree is if Joe Burrow is heated up and he's cooking and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are happy and healthy on the field, they are going to do some damage. I guess you could say the wild card in this whole bunch probably is the Chargers, because you never want to underestimate a Jim Harbaugh team. I just don't know if they have the talent to go up against a team like the Kansas City Chiefs and unseat them. But the one thing we are expecting out of the Chargers is a competent franchise here, not getting out coached or collapsing on a week-to-week basis when it really matters.
Yeah, absolutely so. And that's plagued the Chargers for a very, very long time.
Yes.
Prior to Brandon Staley, before Anthony Lynn, it's kind of been the Chargers' curse in San Diego and now, of course, Los Angeles. Jim Harbaugh, despite what you might think of him, despite what the NCAA says about him, is a program and organization builder at every level he has ever coached. FCS football at the University of San Diego, FBS football at Stanford, a dormant program in the Pac-10, then Pac-12, and of course at Michigan. He wins, he improves, and he does so right away. Take a look at his NFL coaching record with the San Francisco 49ers. The Chargers win total is 8.5. The over has the juice. I think it is a very fair and spot-on win total this year for LA. We had the conversation of worst to first in the AFC. Same story in the NFC. Up next. Worst to first in the AFC, now in the NFC. There was a clear answer in the AFC. It's the Cincinnati Bengals, second best price in the AFC North. Without Joe Burrow for a good majority of last year, the Bengals still finished with a winning record at 9-8, but in the good AFC North, that was dead last. With Joe Burrow fully healthy in 2 of his 4 NFL seasons, the Bengals have won the divisional crown each of those 2 years. That seemed to be the obvious answer from Donnie and my assessment. Now we go to the NFC, where I'm not sure there's as clear of an answer. Here's the teams that finished in either dead last or a tie for last, which I guess is also a tie for third, but we'll save that conversation for another time. In the NFC North, both the Bears and the Vikings were 7-10 in the bottom of the division. The Panthers had the worst record in the National Football League in 2023, 2-15 in the NFC South. The Commanders just 4-13 in the NFC East. The Cardinals just 4-13 in the NFC West, but booked as an underdog in all 17 games. Arizona was 9-8 against the number. DRS for the teams that finished last year in the NFC, who has the best chance of finishing first this year around the conference.
It's kind of tough the way, again, because we had really an easy out with the Bengals, because that's a legitimate Super Bowl contender masquerading with a lot of injuries last year, not performing in a very tough division where they have a chance to actually win it this year. But you take a look at the NFC and you say, which one of these teams could possibly do it? If you're looking on banking on the Cardinals, yes, it is going to help that you have Kyler Murray back from week 1. He's not working his way back from a knee injury. He should be 100% to start the season. You got an epic talent at wide receiver to start, but you are still in a division which quality football teams like the Rams, the Seattle Seahawks would be okay. And then certainly maybe the favorites overall would be the San Francisco 49ers. Let's just say Trent Williams comes back, and also Deebo Samuel's out there with Brandon Ayuk, and that offense is complete. We'll see how that is. So unless you're banking on, well, I think they can do good things, and I hope like the 49ers get injured, that's not a way to do it. We're not going to play it out that way. I don't think the Cardinals have a big chance here. If we're all looking at the Commanders last year, 4-13 rookie quarterback, yes, it's hard to win a division. Dallas has a lot of talent. Philadelphia has a lot of talent. First-year regime for Dan Quinn in Washington. We'll see how that one plays out. I don't really think they have a legitimate chance. Let's go to Chicago and Minnesota. A lot of talent on both of those football teams, but also you're dealing with upswing teams in the Detroit Lions, and also when you take a look at the Green Bay Packers. We expect them to be the top dogs of that division. But again, no slouch. That's a very competitive division all the way through. I don't know if I picked them. Hear me out on this. I do think the Panthers are not going to have a good season, but sometimes you just have to take a step out here and say, new head coach here. Maybe Bryce Young appears to be that quarterback we thought he was, Heisman Trophy winner from Alabama, and plays good football. Because quite frankly, am I real excited about the New Orleans Saints? No. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, more fluke than anything for me in a terrible division last year. And yes, you have the Atlanta Falcons, who I do think win that division with Kirk Cousins, but not a dominant program by any stretch. Why can't the Panthers be somewhat competitive this season? And you might say, you're crazy, you can't do it, but we have to make a decision on, can any one of these have a slight path to it? And if I'm looking at maybe the deepest run, could it be the Panthers? Just because I don't think that division is all that good top to bottom, Ben.
And Donnie, I think that's a very fair argument to make because when you look at the division as a whole the last few years, Tom Brady and the Buccaneers won the division in 2022 with a losing record. Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers won the divisional crown for a third consecutive year at 9-8. The Saints were also 9-8, and the other two teams, the Falcons and, of course, the Panthers, below 500. Now, Atlanta this year has sky-high optimism and expectation. With Kirk Cousins, they're an odds-on favorite. The win total is 9.5. The over has the juice. Atlanta expected to be a double-digit win team. I don't think Carolina is going to sniff more than 6 wins, but 5.5 is the win total for the Panthers. On that list, technically 5 teams were shown. 4 of the 5, a 10-1 price or longer to win a division. Only the Bears, a shorter number. I'll get to Chicago in a moment. 3 of those 5 prices, the longest in a division. Minnesota, Arizona, and Carolina. Washington at 10-1. Not the longest price in the NFC East. That's the New York Giants. But still, to get past either the Cowboys or the Eagles seems insurmountable for Washington. It's why my decision would be the Bears. Now, I don't believe Chicago is going to win the NFC North, but if all the odds, plus 330 to win the division. A relatively short price, 3rd out of 4 in that division. The Bears have an 8.5 win total. The over has the juice. Expected to be a winning team. Could that keep them in contention for a good part of the NFL regular season? Perhaps. That's why I would go with Chicago.
Yeah, no, it does make some sense, and certainly there is a high bar to clear here because you're looking at that team last year from the Texans, trying to equate it to the Bears, and lightning in a bottle. We'll find out.
We shall see.